This is pretty fun. Megyn Kelly kind of rakes Ben Shapiro over the coals in this exchange. I clipped it for social media because I was having a lot of fun with this like a few days ago.
RuPaul mode.
Yeah. Hey, I'm RuPaul now. I'm the good RuPaul. Although maybe that's that guy Asin. He's good RuPaul. He likes Zoran, so we like him. Anyway, I'm clipping things now in my spare time because I have no life. And I was watching this debate between Megyn Kelly and Ben Shapiro, and it's really fascinating because Kelly claims to have sources within the government that say that Epstein didn't kill himself, and Ben Shapiro is defending the government line, and it's just been an like Shapiro on Israel and this, he's losing touch with the base. And the Daily Wire is having all these financial issues. Just kind of fun to watch. And Megyn Kelly, you know, she's flexing on him a little bit here that she's more connected with what MAG is upset about. And I like seeing him in an uncomfortable situation. So here we go.
Of that, I have the names of the people who are making the claim that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, and that the most gross, you know, and sort of extreme of the conspiracy theories, just don't even call them conspiracy theories, the most sort of, you know, extreme version of the theory is not true. I have names of the people who are claiming that. Okay, they are all in the administration. And this is my point. If other people want to make those claims that are counter to that, then they should provide evidence or at least put their names on it so we can question them about that as well, because otherwise we're just
one point of clarification. If even if Epstein, you know, strangled himself with the bedsheet or whatever, the point is he shouldn't have been allowed to have done that. And actually, it's suspicious that even that was allowed.
Yeah, I mean, Wired has now reported, because this administration is so incompetent that they didn't cover up the metadata from when they stitched this together in Adobe, that there was nearly 3 minutes that were missing from the footage, and you could see that it was clipped out and edited. I mean, the one part that is just like incredible to me was that it said here, this is, I'll read a quote because an excerpt from this Wired article. The FBI released both raw and enhanced versions of the video. Both versions include internal comment markers, annotations typically used in editing software to flag moments of interest. The enhanced version, which the FBI referred to as Video 2, contains 15 such markers that apparently correspond to visible movement near 46 door at New York's Metropolitan Correctional Center. The door is near the cell block where Epstein was being held while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. So there are 15 markers at a point where they cut, and you can see a door, 46 door, I guess, beginning to open, or there's visible movement there. I mean, like, they're just so bad at this.
I just also...
Who forgot to edit the door? Guys, what are you doing to me? Guys!
I just also want to point out that whether or not Epstein killed himself is a separate question, and I would ultimately argue has been used as a distraction from the underlying criminal or like the overarching criminal enterprise that he was either the figurehead of or like according to the Trump administration, the sole member, beneficiary, in person complicit in. So like, I think there is an element of this where like the scandalous nature, the seemingly obvious and like clumsy nature of how this has been handled distracts from like what has, you know, for up until this point, what was being charged about Epstein. But it does seem like, given like Trump's inclusion in this cover up now, that a lot of people are like trying to make those connections. Like, okay, but like, why would Trump cover this up? And some people have more plausible explanations than others for why that might be.
Right.
We were talking during the break for real. Like I was saying how, like, you know what? I didn't really believe these conspiracy theories about Epstein. And, you know, I think, you know, the scenario where he was given the means to kill himself or just allowed to kill himself was probably the most plausible. But like at the end of the day, he probably did commit suicide. But now with all this extra stuff out about the missing minutes and the tape, now I fully believe that someone legitimately walked in and snuffed Epstein out. Like,
it could be anything.
Turned me into a conspiracy theorist.
So this is where I'm sort of cautious about this, because it reminds me of, well, two things. One, the missing gap in the Nixon tapes that were clearly edited out by his secretary, Rosemary Woods. And it's clear that she just wiped over something that was incriminating. But this also reminds me of something that happened with the JFK conspiracies with the was known as the Dictabelt recording, that when they looked into the Kennedy assassination conspiracy in the 70s, was used to say actually there was definitely a conspiracy because it was a recording from a police, I believe, police recording. Are you right? Oh, sorry. Brian was it was a recording that supposedly had more than like a couple shots on it. So if there's like too many shots for one guy to fire off, then that proves it's conspiracy. So everyone's like, oh, it's definitely a conspiracy. Now, that evidence is now under question that it might have, the extra shots may have been impulses from some other thing. And so people who say there was no conspiracy say, oh, they believed in a false piece of evidence that supposedly showed conspiracy. That's what I worry about with this video footage thing, that it is just, maybe there is some kind of glitch. And I again,
no,
like,
but I just said there are markers to edit it out.
Well,
I first thought it was possibly, because I know security cameras are weird. They do, depending on the model of camera, they do these weird things to try to save energy or make it work, because they're usually very cheap, but they got to have decent quality so that you can see what's going on them. And I do know there's some that actually like automatically stop footage and then restart it, so they make the clip shorter, which is supposed to help with the life of the battery life of the camera or whatever, to make sure files don't get corrupt and what have you. But here, from what we're now learning, it's like it seems like it was purposefully edited using editing software. Like it wasn't something that just automatically happened in camera.
Right.
But to your point,
go ahead. No, you go ahead. We should probably get back to the clip and then go into it. But yeah. What'd you say?
We'll sandwich it and then.
Okay, fair enough.
Brandon, what was that?
I was going to say, to your point, Matt, just quickly, I worry about something similar where, like, in situations like this, we know that conspiracy theories oftentimes spring up to fill in gaps of information that are left by, like, the lazy narratives and the lack of bridging those narratives that seemingly come from nowhere by our politicians for the audience that is expected to like slop them up. And so I worry when we have issues like this, that people's imaginations go wild and cause them to blindly speculate, which for good reason, like anything could be in that missing part of tape. And I'm not saying this is like the intention of the Trump administration, but like it gives people the ammunition to blindly speculate in ways that might delegitimize the larger conversation that is that's happening about Trump's culpability within the Epstein files, but just the larger culpability of our elite class within those files, right? Because, you know, we've seen this happen before where the conspiracy is defined by the media, by the craziest people who believe it. And right now there's a lot of attention being given to this, but, you know, as nothing gets done, who knows what the narrative will be from both parties in 2 weeks. And then we'll see like, oh, everyone thinks that on the tape that Hillary Clinton is in those missing 3 minutes and she's dressed like Mr. X from, like you said, Resident Evil, and she winks at the camera, or like they bring in Donald Trump on a gurney and they switch their brains or something like in Get Out. Like, you know, they'll highlight those narratives to distract from like the question of like, well, why? What is the imperative on Trump's part to hide these files, given what we know about his relationship and the relationship of many members of his cabinet to Jeffrey Epstein, like Howard Lutnick and Pam Bondi?
Right, exactly.
So here, with that all said, here they continue this debate.
People who are claiming that, okay, they are all in the administration, and this is my point. If other people want to make those claims that are counter to that, then they should provide evidence or at least put their names on it so we can question them about that as well, because otherwise we're just in the realm of pure speculation. And frankly, I just don't find that useful. I would love more useful information. This is why I'm angry at Pam Bondi. I think there should be all the useful information possible. But the same thing holds true for people who are making claims on the other side. Otherwise, I can claim that he was working for a cadre of space aliens who were blackmailing high-profile Americans in order to protect from a future invasion. And there's just about as much evidence for that as many of the claims that are being made on the other side.
All right, well, let's talk about that.
That is made requires evidence. Any claim that's being made requires actual evidence. And at the very least, in the absence of evidence, the credible names of the people that I can either trust or not trust, ranging from, again, the President of the United States and Vice President to the head of the FBI, the AG, and the Deputy Head of the FBI.
Well, I think it's very hard to say those people need to come out and put their names on these claims when they're working for an administration, this one and the one before, that didn't want that to come out. You're asking somebody to countermand the people they work for.
How am I supposed to falsify their claims? Now we're working in the realm of the unfalsifiable.
You're not, but look, Ben, you can't come to me and say, everybody I know says he killed himself. And then I respond saying, I actually have my own sources who say he didn't. And then you say, well, your sources are not valid because they won't put their names on it. Okay, who are your sources? Let's go down the list and then we'll talk about why they might be saying that.
My sources are the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, Casper Tull, the head of the FBI, Dan Bongino, the Deputy Head of the FBI, and Pam Bondi, the Attorney General. And those aren't just my sources. They're everybody's sources because they publicly came out and said this.
Okay. Trump hasn't specifically weighed in on that specific aspect of it. We've all seen the limited things that Trump has said and tweeted on this. And J.D. Vance was calling for transparency and suggesting otherwise prior to taking office. He hasn't commented on this so far, so he's not one of your sources.
He's the vice
you've
president.
Got Cash, you've got Dan, and you've got Pam, and we've already discussed that memo in full detail. I'm talking about people behind the scenes who, prior to this, to Trump taking office, I'm not going to get too specific, but trust me, I have high-level sources who have said they don't believe any of that. Okay. So, and I'm not going to out them for purposes of convincing you, but you're telling me name them. No, I'm not going to. I don't have authorization.
I'm not saying
and then you say, well, I dismiss all of it because you won't name them.
Hold on, Megan. I'm not saying you should name them. I'm saying they should name themselves because otherwise they are being complicit in one of the greatest cover-ups in the history of the American
Republic. That's easy for you to say, Ben. That's very easy for you to say.
Why is that easy for me to say? Why?
Because you'll have your job and you'll have your millions, no matter what they do.
Megan, give me a break. If somebody came out today and they were a whistleblower on the greatest scandal in the history of the American Republic, they would make more money tomorrow than in their entire life working for the FBI. That's ridiculous.
Okay, there are reasons not to cross the people who are in charge, and that's all I'm going to say. And look, this is me not having drawn a conclusion. I don't know what the truth is. I've been reporting in a way. I mean, I see you've taken a side that you've chosen to believe the story that's being offered, and that's fine. A lot of people have. I'm not there yet. I don't actively say that there's a pedophile ring. I don't say any of that. I'm just following the facts, and we're not at the place where I can draw that conclusion.
Well, no, I can draw the conclusion that the evidence that I'm seeing and the people who are speaking about it lead me toward this particular conclusion. And if counter evidence is presented that is not speculative, then I will change my conclusion because that's what I've done on this case. Until this memo came out, I was weighing toward the more extreme version of this theory, and you can look back at my tweets and what I've said about it. And then this came out, and now my perspective has changed. So when the facts change and the people who are speaking,
I'm just not that trusting of government. There are other facts.
Also, I'm sorry, but like, what facts have come out? They have put out a narrative.
They said they don't have anything. Yeah, that's
because there is evidence to the contrary. This is the sort of like the pseudo erudite cope of people at Ben Shapiro's level on the right, that like they presented counter evidence or evidence to prove that it was in fact Jeffrey Epstein, when that's not what happened. In fact, they have said that they can't show us evidence of that because it would re-victimize women, and you know how much the right wing hates re-victimizing women. And so
let's bring Andrew Tate back into the country again.
Let's fly him here first class, right, on Air Force One. Like, so they don't want to do that. And so we haven't seen any evidence to, in fact, counter the circumstantial and what I would say direct evidence both of Donald Trump's involvement in some form with Jeffrey Epstein, perhaps with his, underhanded malicious activities on St. James Island. Jeffrey Epstein calling Donald Trump his closest friend, like all the times they hung out together. And then the evidence of the larger child trafficking ring, and larger, again, which something that gets subsumed into the child trafficking ring, the larger financial malfeasance that he was likely getting up to, right? So like there are like levels to this that are being obscured both by like the suicide and then like by like the Little St. James like blackmail operation, because then there's the larger financial crimes that he was like likely getting up to. But there's evidence of all of that stuff. There's both circumstantial and I would argue direct evidence of that stuff. And all the Trump administration has really done is say, nuh-uh. And then there's that second part of like, present me with evidence to the contrary, or present me with like, other types of evidence. Like, okay, but there's an asymmetry of expectation in authority and power here where it's like, we just simply don't have the ability to do that. Like,
yes, and he's relying on that.
Yeah, to make it seem to bolster his argument, but the government has the only legal right to that evidence. And people have been asking for transparency, and the government has been saying that they can't provide that. And that's what's giving rise to a lot of this speculation. But like, we don't have the ability to get that evidence for ourselves. Like, he's calling on some sort of like, maybe some third party who has this evidence out there to release it or something, but we don't know if that's the case or if that's possible.
Yeah, and I don't need to believe that Megyn Kelly has these sources to find that exchange like interesting, because you see the tension there where Shapiro, I mean, if there is some, again, intelligence connection and there is connection to Israeli intelligence, the timing of Benjamin Netanyahu coming to to the United States to meet with Trump the day after they released like their thing saying there's nothing to see here on Epstein to Axios on a Sunday night is fascinating to me. And you're hearing the most like pro-Israel people in the Democratic Party, like Richie Torres, go on television and talk about how, oh, there's nothing to see here. He killed himself. This is a conspiracy theory and stuff like that. Like, you know, I'm not saying that there's a connection to Mossad, but there was a connection through Ghislaine Maxwell, certainly. Yeah. And it cannot just be Mossad. It can be both a joint United States and Israeli intelligence operation, which is like our closest basically collaborator in terms of intelligence in many ways often. Although, you know, there is some issues like the CIA doesn't fully love Mossad or Israel sometimes because they cause so many headaches for our intelligence gathering, right? But there are other elements where there could be 100% coordination.
And that's what frustrates me about Megyn Kelly is this whole like I got sources thing because she's trying to bolster credibility when she could just be a journalist and recite what is in the public record, which is like the Southern District of New York talking about tapes with people's names on them and young girls' names on them. Well, what were those names? Unredact those. Or this whole thing with Alex Acosta, former Trump's labor secretary, who is literally quoted, I was told Epstein, quote, belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. And here he is in 2019 when Epstein was arrested and Democrats were calling Acosta to step down because of his complicity in that. And this is around when Christine Pelosi was saying some of our faves might be implicated. But let's just get Acosta's answer to about this Epstein intelligence thing here.
I think those rumors are misconstruing the acts of the office with respect to that particular paragraph. One more question.
Richard Lardner from the Associated Press. Mr. Secretary, were you ever made aware at any point in your handling of this case if Mr. Epstein was an intelligence asset of some sort?
So there has been reporting to that effect, and let me say there's been reporting to a lot of effects in this case. Not just now, but over the years. And again, I would hesitate to take this reporting as fact. This was a case that was brought by our office. It was brought based on the facts. And I look at that reporting and others. I can't address it directly because of our guidelines. But I can tell you that a lot of reporting is just going down rabbit holes.
That's a non-denial.
That is, I didn't see that before. That's basically confirming, like, I mean, that is not, he did not deny that he was told, that he said that. I mean.
Lots of reporting.
What, has anyone, like, can people start directly asking members of the Trump administration about the metadata and what Wired has reported on? That they edited it's not that the camera reset. There are internal markers in the metadata that show that they edited out nearly 3 minutes.
I feel like even if the tape hadn't been edited, like what was it supposed to prove? There wasn't a tape of Jeffrey Epstein not being killed. It wasn't even a tape of directly his cell door. Like it wasn't like based on the fact that it was edited, I wasn't going to trust it had they put it out because it's all being handled by the people who are now telling us something that's unbelievable based on what we had been told, even by them just months ago, but also because the suicide doesn't particularly matter because someone could have told him to kill himself or something worse would have happened. Like who knows, like there are ways in which this could have been done to resemble that. But the fact that they didn't even have this tape and couldn't even really provide a good explanation for where it came from after we were told that it didn't exist for multiple years made the whole thing suspicious from the beginning. The fact that it also has a missing segment to it almost seems like just egregious, like because even had it just been one unbroken set of tape, it would have already been so suspicious. But the fact that it has missing time, I mean, it's almost like they're not capable of trying, which I think raises like bigger question of like, why instead of saying that there is no list, why didn't they just feed some people to the sharks? Why didn't they find some like E-list, D-list celebrities, some like random banker who works for some like random bank in Switzerland or something who was like doing this? Like, why didn't they just feed people to the sharks? Why do they say it doesn't exist when I mean, all evidence points to the contrary, right? Like, then what was John Luke Brunel doing in prison? What did he what did he kill him? What did he kill himself for?
Everyone knows about Prince Andrew because of the Virginia Giuffre case. Why not even just say him? I mean, that's one that's no surprise whatsoever.
I mean, I want to make sure that this is correct, but I thought I saw that they were dropping some sort of probe into Prince Andrew.
They were, yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, the FBI is dropping their probe, and now he can travel overseas, which is crazy. If there was no list and there was no ring, like, why was there a probe that he couldn't travel overseas in a way that like was?
They thought there was a list, and they assumed his name would be on it, and then they discovered there was no list, so they took him. It was an FBI probe. It was an FBI probe. The same people who had the evidence all this time that were doing the investigation.
Yeah, they're just incredibly stupid and bad at being the deep state. That's the thing is that there was clearly some sort of like cross partisan understanding about the sensitivity of this kind of case and the intelligence and the information behind it, that once they got into office and they realized, oh, wait, we can't put this out there, they had to answer to their base, and they're just too stupid to do it effectively.
I mean, I do think that there's an element of like what conspiracies are for here that is illustrated by this miscommunication between them and their base, because people like Kash Patel, people like Dan Bongino over on Rumble, they were using the parroting of this conspiracy to enrich themselves, and they got their base frothed up into like a frenzy about the release of this list, not because they cared about the like women or like a child sex trafficking ring. Obviously people like Matt Gaetz don't care about stuff like that, but because it enriched them. And for a lot of conspiracy theorists like RFK Jr., for example, they get into these worlds because they don't feel that they're getting enough attention. They feel like there's some sort of establishment out there that gets more attention than them, and they want these conspiracies to help uplift them to a place of prestige. And once they get there, they just jettison them. But what they don't realize that their audience, maybe their audience doesn't actually care about women either, but for them, the work it's doing different kinds of work. Like, it's not like they're not directly enriched by like Kash Patel becoming FBI director to the extent that they would drop this. They want something else to enrich them. They want like arrests to make them feel like, oh yeah, the Democrats really are Satanists. The Democrats really are like satanic adrenochrome extracting like, cultists, and the Republicans can't provide that for them. And I think they kind of just misestimated how like dumb and willing to move on their audience would be.
Hey folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.